Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. This is a wild episode. Listen, we've taken the podcast on the road before, and but it looks much different than the way it does right now. So if you're listening to this, I would honestly say you should go give it a listen, give it a watch, just to set the scene. Maybe it'll explain why there's sounds of crashing waves in the background. But yeah, I think this is very interesting. We are on a trip down to the Washington coast, camped out here right by the water, which is delightful. And of course, we had to bring our entire brewing setup, and we thought this is a great opportunity to record a very special episode about brewing outdoors. But like always, we have some not batch. This is the first time. This is the first time we have not had batch on the episode.
Yep.
I don't know if this is depressing or not.
No, it's totally fine. I am confident in my AeroPress skills that this may be one of the best brews on the pod. I have not tried it yet, but it's definitely been cooling sitting out in the elements.
Could be cold brew by now.
It could be. All right. It's actually nice weather for where we're at up in Washington, on the peninsula. It's a nice 58 degrees.
It's very nice. It's very nice.
I'm wearing 3 layers, but I feel fine.
It's perfect for just enough layers. So just a little bit. I think it's good. This is an AeroPress brew. Aromas are pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Thoughts? You think it's probably a little under, hey?
Yeah, maybe a little under.
Mm-hmm. It's not bad. I kind of like
pup on the scene.
Yeah,
like a wild rogue puppy here.
Yeah.
It's not too bad, you know. I also don't think that it's spectacular. Like, there's something that's like, I'm like, oh, I kind of like it, but I also feel like it's missing something. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I basically went 17 in with coffee, 230 grams of water. And I did, it's a total brew time of 250, slightly under. I believe it's 35 clicks on the Comandante red clicks. Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think I've had better brews. I can't really. This is the thing. I think a lot of AeroPress brews oftentimes won't taste sour or bitter.
Right.
But they won't have all the greatness of a manual filter brew.
Right.
So I think that's how I feel about this. It's not bad by no means. No. Like, this is enjoyable. This is drinkable. But yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's not the best brew. I was wrong about that. I mean, but considering the elements, brewing on a log, not much control over what we have to fight here. Can't have like a controlled, nice room, stable temps. That's one thing you got to consider. It's like the outdoor temperature is actually affecting your brewing temperature.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. That is actually a variable that is very, very evident that you have to deal with. But before we go in there, because I think that's something that we can riff on for a little bit. But before we go anywhere, this is a Colombian coffee, and it's actually a coffee that we've been working on. We've been dialing in. It will be landing in the near future. I like this coffee. I don't know. Before we get into it, I mean, I'd say, like, so just off the cuff, what's one thing you like about this coffee?
Man, sorry, I'm mid-munch. Man, I'll tell you what, folks. When you're in the outdoors, it's like you always have to be munching and sipping on something. So this podcast wouldn't be the same if we weren't munching on some Milanos, dude.
That's fair.
All right. No, what? Oh, and there we go. That's kind of what happens. Down. One brew down.
Yeah.
No, I gotta say I like this coffee because it's got very It's got intense flavor to it. And it's also not a natural, which I really, that's what I'm looking for in a coffee. You know, we always talk about natural coffees tend to have a little bit more funk, which we try to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
But this coffee has medium complexity and big flavors, which I think is great. I like it.
The big flavor is what really got to me, because it has this big, rich, big, round, bulky flavor.
Right.
But it doesn't have. Yeah, it's also not a. It's not a natural. It's also I think the first time we've had this process, just purely this, not
Maybe.
with anything else. Maybe. No, I think so.
Yeah.
I guess it's arguable,
Yeah.
but yeah. So keep an eye out for that, folks. It's coming soon. We're pretty pumped about it. We also have a few more other coffees coming in hot. It's gonna be a tasty second half to the summer, because summer's ripping by.
Right.
So some nice tasty coffees on the way. But that being said, we touched upon a little variable. First things first, I think brewing outdoors, your conditions matter a lot. And a lot of having a successful brew, I think, outdoors, which we'll get into the gear a little bit. But first things first, you really have to do some planning before the trip.
Right.
Even if that's like a simple trip to the park, not saying you're like going down the coast or, 5-6 hour drive, whatever. Even just down to the park, you have to consider like, what's the weather going to look like? What are temperatures going to look like? Do you need a quick brew? Are you going to sit down? Are you going to relax? Are you hiking somewhere?
Yeah.
Do you need to be cognizant of, weight on your trip? Mm-hmm. That all has a role to play, because you need to be able to pack accordingly. Like one thing you'll realize that you can't bring, a Stag kettle, a V60, a carafe, a scale, a generator, an electric grinder,
Right.
with you on a hiking trip where you're hiking, 5-10 miles into the mountains.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we've done it multiple ways. This exact brew here and on this trip, I would consider myself as an overpacker, and I did overpack for this trip.
Yes.
But we've also done hikes where when we hiked Chain Lakes, while it was closed down up in Artist Point area of Mount Baker, Washington, you packed all the coffee gear, and I believe you just brought the jet boil, coffee, grinder, and the AeroPress, right?
Yep.
So there's different ways to approach this, and I think with that approach in mind, or with your location in mind, your approach is going to change. But even before that, I think that's the beauty of brewing outdoors is, yes, the coffee is going to be important. Yes, sipping on a tasty beverage is great, but you're there for the outdoors. The experience completely changes. And I think that's the best part. Whether your coffee is like over or under extracted, balanced, sweet, whatever it is, it's still a fantastic cup of coffee just because you're like chilling next to a freaking big log and you're at one of the best surf spots in Washington State. That's kind of the defining factor. So location really matters how you prepare it, but it also matters in how you're going to experience the cup.
I think it actually makes brewing coffee fun without having to overthink everything.
Yes.
Because you have to show yourself some grace. You can't be mad that it's over or under extracted when you're working with the elements. Maybe your water, your slurry is cooling down way faster. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't have all the fidgets and the gadgets that you need, that you have at home to brew your spectacular. You can't bring a WDT to, I mean, you can, we should have.
We did.
We did?
Yeah. I brought the flare too.
No,
you
did. Yeah, see, even bringing the flare, like sometimes you won't have the opportunity to bring a flare 58, And so, the fact that you can enjoy a tasty cup of coffee, you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's a unique experience. And it makes the outdoor experience, I think, better for me. Yep. But also, the outdoors make the coffee experience better for me.
Yep.
So there's a lot of goodness. If you have not tried this, you definitely should.
Yeah. I mean, everyone probably knows by now, like our annual Eagle trip. That's kind of the iconic.
That's fire.
That's iconic, yeah, and that experience really defined brewing in the outdoors for me. I don't think I really experienced much of that beforehand. So that's how I realized, okay, this is very special, and this is actually something I want to continually practice. So if you're listening to the pod, like that's my encouragement is like, okay, don't get overwhelmed by having all the camp gear. We'll go through what is a must, but you can start going out to your park, maybe doing a quick brew, and even taking one of those, those kits that already have everything you need to brew coffee, the little coffee kits. There's ways to make it easier, so go for the experience.
Even if that means brewing, some specialty instant coffee outdoors.
Ooh, that too.
That's totally feasible. That's totally doable. If that's what you feel most comfortable with doing, that'll probably taste way better than trying to go all out, being frustrated, pissed off at something, going wrong. Pour some water, enjoy the cup, and there it is. But going back to what you said, like our Chain Lakes trip, which was wild, happened like years ago. I think all I brought was the jet boil, which is an outdoors way to brew, to heat up water, which is extremely versatile. Overall, outdoors you can make all kinds of foods. It's a lot more versatile and practical than you may think. It's crazy what you can do with just hot water. But it was just the jet boil and the AeroPress. And on this trip we had that and way more, including the flare. My favorite thing about bringing the AeroPress along is that it's kind of a foolproof way of brewing coffee. It gives you the bare necessities. Of course, we brought a scale also. I always bring a scale, even if that's just a tiny, Akai Lunar, or any like a small Amazon scale will work. Anything that's small, because you're also you're trying to sacrifice on some weight and size. But I think my favorite part about bringing the AeroPress is that it's indestructible. I mean, it's plastic, almost indestructible. It's easy to use. You just need to add water and plunge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think for anyone wanting to brew outdoors, I think an AeroPress is a must-have.
Yep, 100%. Plus, you can purchase other things that will help the brewing experience be easier. If you didn't want to bring filters, because I know those little tiny papers can get in the way and you may lose them, blah, blah, blah. Always add the fellow Prismo or one of those metal filters from Able, whatever. There's options to make it even easier and a much more enjoyable experience. But I gotta say, I also have a jet boil, but my jet boil is actually a little camp stove. I actually have it right behind me right here. It's one of these guys, and it's great. It is a little more work, but it is also slightly more versatile. You can throw on a little pan on there if you needed to make some eggs. But regardless, I like that thing. You got it for one of my birthdays, and it's been an excellent tool. But you know what I really love is the fact that your jet boil has a spout, and you can actually use that spout as a way to pour into the AeroPress.
Say the jet boil does?
Yeah, yours, right?
Oh, yeah.
It has that little spout on the end. So it's now you don't even need a kettle to bring with you. I bring the fellow Stag kettle, the stovetop. But for you don't. We went fishing. Remember when we went fishing? We brought the coffee setup. Didn't even bring a kettle.
Yeah, that's also, it helps that you can do an AeroPress because you don't have to be worried about channeling or not having the perfect flow rate. Really, honestly, you're just trying to get water in the chamber and pull through. That's, I think, very convenient, especially for the outdoors. So, I think I think what we've covered is already a big chunk of how we go about to brewing outdoors. Tell me about your flare experience, just brewing at home, but also brewing here. I think a big part of why we actually brought the flare is because what we were doing this weekend is actually we pulled up to a camp spot. There was a picnic table. Yeah. It's not as rugged as our Chain Lakes experience, where we are backpacking through the backcountry it's a little more intense. So you can't always bring a flare for something like that.
Yeah.
But pulling up to a camp spot, you have a picnic table, why not? Share what your experience was like using the flare outdoors.
The great thing about the flare is, one, you don't need electricity, which our campsite had no amenities, so we had no power, no nothing. And the Flare 58 does have that little unit that warms up the chamber, which is great when you're at home. You plug it in. You could buy the attachment, the battery attachment. I don't have the battery attachment. Mm-hmm. I basically heated the chamber a couple of times to get it hotter before I put in my total water. So there's ways to avoid it. But even with that, I think the beauty is the simplicity of the flare. It's very, very easy to brew. And yes, we did go over the top. I had an espresso scale. I had a dosing scale. I had a dosing funnel. I had a WDT. I had it all, right? But it's really not necessary to pull a good shot of espresso out on a campground or on a picnic table. Those other things, they were cool. But that's also part of the downside is I couldn't figure out my bar flow, quote unquote, because I don't know whatever my picnic table flow. I couldn't figure that out. So basically I had to make a lot of messes a couple of times, just spilled stuff, knocked over. I even poked myself with the WDD tool. So there's like, there were some casualties, you know. So sometimes just bring less actually yields like a much better experience. So I would really I would encourage you just to bring less. Do what you can with what you have. Don't try to bring every single funnel you have to see which one works better.
Unless you can. Listen, that's why we started off with saying, hey, you should be planning for these trips.
Fair.
Because
you're right.
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You know, if you if you have a lot of space in your car, you can fit whatever you want, please, you know, throw it in there. But I think the flare is killer. Like after that experience, knowing that you can brew it at home on your kitchen counter, pack it up, and now it's all of a sudden you're in a park on the coast overlooking the Pacific, you know, the Pacific Ocean with a tasty shot of espresso. I mean,
unreal.
Doesn't get any better, folks.
No. I mean,
that's unreal.
I mean, that's why we built a whole freaking B-roll experience. It was cinematic, my friend. It was great. I'm not hyping it up because I just want to hype it up. I really loved that experience. It was super fun. I don't know. I just kept pulling shots. I don't even know if I was drinking them, man. I was just sending them. Like, anybody want a shot? Like, I walked around. I no joke. I almost did it, but then
this is
we had a change of plans. We ran out of salt. We're making some scrambled eggs. So I walked over to the neighbor, meet and greet, grab a thing of salt, and I was like, man, I probably want to give him some espresso. But you know what I saw on their campground? He had a little V60 set up. He was already...
Was he?
He was taking care of that person. I was like, well, I won't bother you. I don't know what your bed looks like. Looks a little sludgy to me, but, you know, you're enjoying your cup of coffee, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters, yeah. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Yeah, I honestly, I really do think that if you want outdoor espresso, the flare is a killer option.
Yeah.
Once again, pair that with, you know, a little bit of a jet boil, and you're off to a fantastic start with brewing. I mean, you can get tasty espresso out of the flare, which is incredible. One thing, you know, that I think we missed, we haven't talked about yet, is also grinder.
Yes.
I think, you know, I actually think that if you have a killer grinder at home, it's totally acceptable to grind your coffee at home and just take it with you. Honestly, 1, 2, 3 days should not kill your coffee that much.
Yeah.
Your coffee is probably going to taste good. The problem is when you pre-ground, you can't really adjust your brew if it's tasting, you know,
right,
good or bad. So you kind of have to do the work a little bit beforehand, and dial it in at home. But you can do that. So that is not a problem. You don't need to necessarily buy another grinder just for the outdoors. However, both of us own a hand grinder. I own 3 hand grinders now. I own the Timor C2 and a couple Comandantes, and both of those options are fantastic.
Yep, same. I owe the C40, and again, like, that was a birthday present that you got me, and it was for that very purpose of traveling and brewing on the go. But even regardless of like traveling, I use it at home as one of my go-to grinders for espresso. I have red clicks and it works great at home. And now when we're out here, I mean, it's freaking fantastic. One, because I'm used to using it at home already. I'm using it for my flair. So that adjustment was seamless. I didn't have to think through it again. I already knew my grind size. I just went for it, made a couple of tweaks, and I was there with my dial. So I think that's the great thing about having a hand grinder, especially if you don't have a very expensive like electric grinder. That's what I want to say. It's great to just buy a hand grinder that you can use all around, whether on a trip or even at home.
For sure. Yeah, that's excellent. And the Comandante, whether you get that or the 1Z Espresso, like these grinders are like, I would call them like world class. Like,
right.
You're not sacrificing very much on your quality of brew, which is insane now that we have these tools that you can brew pretty tasty coffee on the go, out in the middle of nowhere, with limited power and stuff like that. Like, that's incredible. Like the brews that we had this morning, I mean, they were great. I literally no complaints.
Yeah. So a little twist to the episode. Here's a thought that came to my mind. Because we're talking about brewing outdoors, limited amenities, don't have all the power. Here's a scenario. What gear are you bringing? You have limited time to pack. There's a zombie apocalypse. It's spreading quick. All you have is your, Mazda, and you can't pack it all out because there's important stuff to grab, considering the podcasting gears has to go. But you have to pick a few tools. What are you bringing?
For coffee brewing?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I'd bring exactly what I said, this episode. I think it's my go-to. It's my bread and butter. It rips. Honestly, just grabbing, I wouldn't even necessarily even grab a scale. Like, if I gotta go, I gotta go.
Right.
I'd grab the AeroPress and something to heat my water with and a grinder. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's really all you need, and you can get in the ballpark of some tasty coffee.
Yeah. Man, that's a hard one for me. I'm thinking, should I bring the Tricolate? Because it's also a great outdoor brewer because it's plastic.
Fair, actually,
it's very simple. It looks like a bigger AeroPress, but you're not plunging at anything. You can grind much finer. I don't know. I'm like that's also an option. The only thing that the AeroPress keeps taking first place for me is the fact that it has those little numbers. Sometimes I brew just for fun, like I eyeball everything and just see what happens, because you don't need a scale and you don't need all the other tools. So I could literally consider just bringing an AeroPress with an attachment and not even worry about getting a boiling unit or whatever, not even worry about having to get another vessel. Literally just bring one device. And I mean, if worse comes to worse, I can lightly use it as a weapon. I mean, it is a bad weapon. It's actually kind of soft and gentle. I mean, but those zombies have a lot of rot on them.
I will say though, using a Comandante as a weapon,
no,
I think that's feasible.
Yeah.
You don't get much reach, so he's close, but it's less.
Yeah.
If I have it in my back pocket and he's coming after me and I'm my back against the wall and I gotta live, I'm pulling that thing out. I'm giving him a nice little.
Oh man.
Little graze on the head.
Graze on the head. That's
Just
it.
give
Yeah.
him a little.
Straight through the eyeball. It's perfect. If it's perfect in the socket. I mean. All right, folks, I don't want to go too deep and too dark into this episode. We got to keep it regular, not explicit.
The facts. That being said, at the end of the day, just have fun. I honestly think, and I could be biased because I'm literally born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. This is very natural and second nature to us. Give it a shot. If you haven't, give it a shot. If you have, great, do it more. But give it a shot. You can go as low-key as you want, or as extreme as you want, to the point where we're bringing special water,
Yeah,
We're
that's
bringing
wild.
our own brew water. Like, you could go that route out if you actually really want. But, yeah, I think just have fun with it. Any last words?
Oh, I think, yeah. Keep it simple, have fun, and remember that both the outdoor experience and the coffee experience combined will create a new experience. And if you haven't done it, you're missing out.
Killer. Absolutely killer. Well, folks, I think that's a wrap to this really interesting episode. If you made it this far, down below, tell us, have you brewed outdoors? What are you brewing? How do you brewing? What's your workflow look like? Do you agree with what we said? I don't know. Give us some feedback down below. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully the waves crashing in the background were not too much of a distraction, but I think that's a wrap. I love that we just pulled this off on the beach. That's insane.
Solid.
Alrighty, folks. As we always say, friends, remember, reflect what's good.